everybody, how's it going? Today, let's take a detailed look at the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner Superbird. And this is going to be a detailed, in-depth review of the Superbird. We'll start it up, show the engine, get an exhaust clip and go over the performance data, and show you a bunch of the unique aspects of the interior as well as exterior. And I'd like to give a big thanks and special shout out to Street Side Classic Cars located in Charlotte, North Carolina, for allowing me to come out and check out this very cool 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner Superbird. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up, let her run. The exterior color is a factory Plymouth color for 1970 known as Limelight Green, and features a full black vinyl interior with silver accenting. Beautiful. While the Superbird was built to win races, you can either get it well optioned out just like a typical Roadrunner or have it kind of a Spartan interior. This one, for example, has the radio delete, but it does have power brakes with discs in the front, power steering. One of its trademarks, dubbed the voice of the Roadrunner, is actually mimicked to sound like the cartoon character. Pretty nifty. Now, as far as gearboxes, if you opted for the optional bucket seats, there's a full-length center console that would run all the way back, and you can opt for a 4-speed manual. This particular one has Chrysler's very durable 3-speed Torque Flight automatic gearbox with low gear selection. And so we're going to flip on the headlamps. Alright, we'll go ahead and roll down the window. And we'll check out the exterior, shall we? During the late 1960s, the need for speed and aerodynamic abilities were in full swing between American automakers and competing for the top spots of the NASCAR circuit. Compared with the engineering, performance, and technology of today, racers were quite simple and often were highly modified versions of regular production vehicles. Aerodynamics were also a struggle as you'd expect, spurring some of the most outrageous styling that not only made a historical statement, but led to great racing advantages and race wins. Ford's Torino Talladega and Mercury's Cyclone Spoiler 2 were the kings of the quote-unquote Aero Wars, with sleek bodies, rounded edges, and fastback profiles. Their performance advantage was their wind-cutting abilities, leading to faster speed and greater control with downforce. In the background, Chrysler Group struggled to compete, not necessarily from a lack of performance, but the fact that the Dodge Charger 500 had the aerodynamics of a brick, and couldn't compete with the sleek profiles of its rivals. Therefore, something needed to change for the brand to once again become competitive in the circuit. In 1969, Dodge went out on a limb and created one of the most memorable NASCAR creations in history, the Charger Daytona. Following that, in 1970, Plymouth came out with its own winged car, the Roadrunner Superbird. As outrageous as they were for the time, NASCAR required automakers to make production versions, while in limited numbers, of the cars that raced the circuit. The Daytona set many records that carried on over to the Superbird. It was the first race car to break the 200-mile-an-hour barrier and was the first vehicle to be completely designed utilizing wind tunnels and computer analysis. With a drag coefficient of only 0.28, it cut through the wind better than many of today's automobiles. This Superbird came equipped with the optional 15-inch rally wheels wrapped in bias ply F60-15 tires. As I mentioned earlier, power brakes came standard with custom one-off iron discs in front measuring 11.75 inches, while 10-inch drums brought up the rear. The discs are internally ventilated with 40 individual slots for better cooling and are not interchangeable with other models. The unibody and suspension consisted of similar construction as a typical Roadrunner with independent wishbones in front and heavy-duty torsion beams measuring 0.92 inches in diameter with telescopic shock absorbers. The upper control arms are actually angled to keep the nose from diving under hard braking. The rear consisted of a live axle with semi-elliptic leaf springs and shock absorbers with anti-roll bars. The original Charger Daytona first set a record of 200.45 miles per hour on March 24, 1970 at Talladega while driven by Buddy Barker. The effort to get that car up to speed is incredible and largely thanks to the highly modified body. The steel aerodynamic nose cone added 19 inches to the front clip and allowed air to pass right over while pushing it closer to the ground at higher speeds. The new air grabber hood for 1970 Roadrunners were left off of the Superbird in favor of an elongated hood with modified front fenders borrowed from the Dodge Coronet. It helped blend the lines and create that streamlined appearance. The high rear wing did two things as well. One, it was mounted high enough in the undisturbed air to help further stabilize the rear with downforce, and two, to basically just allow the trunk lid to clear. Not only that, the body of the Superbird was smoother and more refined than the Daytona with unique styling cues including the fiberglass pop-up headlamps. The rear glass is also completely flush. In efforts of cost saving from polishing weld lines and seams, a vinyl roof was applied to each vehicle and was a standard feature. And while for show and production models, the front fender vents actually served a purpose on race models. It allowed for a cutout to be made supposedly for tire clearance and suspension travel, but most likely it was used to release trapped air from the wheel wells to reduce under-fender air pressure and lift. Overall length is 220 inches with a width of 76.4 inches and a height of 61.4 inches. Total curb weight is right around 3,858 pounds. To open the hood, you're going to want to first release the standard hood pins that latch it down, and then I'll release it up so you can grab the handle underneath. There were three different engine choices for the Superbird: a quote-unquote base 440 cubic inch V8 with a single Carter 4-barrel carburetor, a top-of-the-line 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, and this particular example's 440 pushrod overhead valve V8 with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors and 2 valves per cylinder, otherwise known as the 440 6-barrel. Only 716 Superbirds came with the 6-barrel, while much more rare is the Hemi V8, and that's just over 100, I think it was right over 120 or so. The 446 produced around 390 horsepower at 4,700 RPM and 490 pound-feet of torque at 3,200 RPM. 0 to 60 times were an average of 5.9 seconds with a quarter-mile time of 14.26 seconds at 103.7 miles per hour. Fuel mileage data isn't widely available, but for a 426 Hemi, common research shows that you can expect somewhere around 8 city, 12 highway. As far as the top dog 426, it produced 425 horsepower and had a 0 to 60 time as low as 4.8 seconds. The Superbird is by no means a luxurious vehicle, even though you can kinda option it out just depending on your personal preference. The unique exterior is translated into an all-black interior with sporty silver accent and some polished aluminum brightwork. The door panels are pretty basic, just feature some vinyl padding with the silver accent coming up across the middle, some Roadrunner decals, manual side vents to increase the interior ventilation, and your interior door handles mounted on the padded armrest with your manual window cranks. Standard equipment on all Superbirds was a manually adjustable full bench seat where buckets were an option like I mentioned earlier. The bench seat is only adjustable sliding back and forth via that little mechanism down below. There's also retractable seat belts down below and seat belts mounted on the top of the headliner, as well as standard headrests. Aluminum entry guards traipse into a roomy floorboard with a very comprehensive dash, nice and standard, straight across, with all of your necessary gauges, and you can also option those out as much as you want as well. All nicely finished off with a full perforated vinyl headliner. So let's go and see how she sounds. Gotta love the sound of that classic American muscle. So we're gonna shut her up. Well, all in all, the Superbirds could get optioned out like a typical Roadrunner, but this one's pretty much a plain Jane. Came with the standard radio faceplate if the vehicle wasn't equipped with it from the factory, as well as a standard heater up top. This particular one does not have air conditioning. Instead, there are two manual levers down below to open up some floor vents to allow some fresh air to come in. There's also a lighter and ashtray, as well as a padded dash going all the way across the vehicle. Vinyl visors, and a manually dimming rearview mirror. Power wipers, windshield washer fluid, and up top, your gauge pack. Alternator, oil pressure, vehicle temperature, as well as fuel. Right next to your speedometer is where a tachometer would be if so equipped. And off to the far left is your park and brake warning light, your headlight control like you saw earlier, as well as panel brightness. Alrighty. Go ahead and shut her down. And we'll check out the back seat. And to flip the seat back, just grab this little mechanism here. Seat folds up and away to make entry and egress a little bit easier for the rear passengers. As you'd expect, rear seat room is quite plentiful. I'm around 5'10", have about inch and a half of leg space, and probably 2 inches or so of head space. And coat hooks up top. Ashtrays in the rear, and your window rollers. So let's go and check out the rest of the vehicle, shall we? and your glove box. NASCAR legends, the Charger Daytona and Roadrunner Superbird are highly collectible today for their anything-goes styling and fantastic performance. For low Superbird productions around 1900 units, they're few and far between, and so cool to get to see in person. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed this detailed look at the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner Superbird. Be sure to stay tuned next time, there's a lot more where that came from. Take care everybody.